The rain hammered against the windows of the Chen family's small apartment on Earth's Luna colony, creating a rhythm that 8-year-old Maya had grown to love. She pressed her face against the cold glass, watching the water streak down in rivulets that caught the neon lights from the street below. Her parents were arguing again, their voices carrying from the kitchen in hushed but urgent tones. "We can't afford another mouth to feed, Lynn," her father's voice carried the weight of exhaustion that had become all too familiar since the mining accident 6 months ago. "It's not about the money, David," her mother replied, her accent still carrying traces of her Mandarin heritage despite 20 years on Luna. "The adoption center said this one is different. They've had him for 3 years, and nobody wants him." Maya's ears perked up. They were talking about adoption again. She'd been asking for a sibling for years, but her parents always said the same thing: they couldn't afford it. The Luna colony wasn't kind to families without steady income, and her father's disability payments barely covered their basic needs. "Different how?" David's voice carried suspicion. "He's not entirely human," Lynn admitted, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "The records say he's part draconian. His mother was human, but his father, well, they found him as an infant after the draconian raids on Proxima Station. He's been in the system ever since." Maya's breath fogged the window as she listened intently. She knew about the draconian raids from school. The teacher had explained how the reptilian aliens had attacked human settlements in the Outer Rim, taking prisoners and conducting experiments. The idea that there might be a child born from such circumstances both terrified and fascinated her. "A half-breed?" David's voice carried the same prejudice that Maya heard from some of the other colony residents. "Lynn, we can barely take care of Maya as it is." "His name is Zephyr," Lynn continued, ignoring her husband's concerns. "He's 12 years old, and, according to his file, he's incredibly intelligent but struggles with emotional regulation. The center says he's been returned by 7 different families." 7 families. Maya's heart clenched at the thought. She couldn't imagine being unwanted by 7 different sets of parents. Her own parents might argue about money, but they'd never made her feel unwanted. "What does Maya think about this?" David asked, and, suddenly, both parents were looking toward the living room where Maya quickly pretended to be absorbed in her homework tablet. "Maya, sweetheart," Lynn called. "Can you come here for a minute?" Maya walked into the kitchen, noting how her parents sat across from each other at their small table, the space between them seeming wider than usual. Her mother's dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her father's prosthetic leg was propped up on a chair, a sure sign that it was causing him pain again. "We wanted to talk to you about something important," Lynn began, reaching out to take Maya's small hand. "How would you feel about having a big brother?" Maya's eyes widened. "Really? You mean it?" "It would mean some changes," David interjected, his practical nature taking over. "We'd have to share the apartment space differently. You might have to give up some things you're used to having." But Maya was already nodding enthusiastically. She'd dreamed of having a sibling for as long as she could remember. The other kids at school had brothers and sisters to play with, to share secrets with, to protect them from bullies. Maya had always felt like something was missing. "What's he like?" Maya asked, settling into the chair between her parents. Lynn pulled up a file on her tablet, showing Maya a photograph that made her gasp. The boy in the image looked human at first glance, but there were differences that marked him as something more. His eyes were a brilliant golden color that seemed to glow even in the static photograph. His hair was an unusual silver white that caught the light strangely. Most striking were the small, pearl-white scales that traced along his cheekbones and down his neck, disappearing under his shirt collar. "His name is Zephyr," Lynn explained. "He's been in foster care since he was very small. He's had some difficulties finding a permanent home." "Why?" Maya asked, studying the photograph intently. Despite his unusual appearance, something about his eyes reminded her of the stray dogs she sometimes fed behind the apartment building. There was intelligence there, but also a deep sadness that made her chest tight. David shifted uncomfortably. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand, Maya. Zephyr is half draconian, which means he has abilities and characteristics that are different from regular humans. What kind of abilities? Maya's curiosity overrode any fear she might have felt. According to his file, he has enhanced strength and speed, Lin read from the tablet. His senses are much sharper than a human's, particularly his hearing and sense of smell. He also has some limited ability to sense emotions, which can be overwhelming for him in crowded places. He can feel what other people are feeling? Maya asked, fascinated. Something like that, Lin nodded. But it also means he sometimes has trouble controlling his own emotions. When he gets upset or scared, his draconian traits become more prominent. The families who returned him, David added reluctantly, they said he was too difficult to handle. Some reported property damage when he had what they called episodes. Maya looked back at the photograph, studying Zephyr's face more carefully. Now she could see what she'd missed before, the tightness around his eyes, the way his smile didn't quite reach them. He looked like he was trying very hard to appear normal, to be what people wanted him to be. He looks lonely, Maya said quietly. Yes, Lin agreed softly. The social worker says he's been asking if anyone has ever wanted to adopt him permanently. He knows that most families only keep him for a few months. That's terrible, Maya said, her young heart breaking for a boy she'd never met. No wonder he has episodes. I'd be upset too if 7 families didn't want me. David and Lin exchanged a look that Maya didn't quite understand. She could see her father wavering, his natural protectiveness warring with his practical concerns about their financial situation. If we did this, David said slowly, it would be a permanent decision. We couldn't just return him if things got difficult. I know, Lin replied firmly. That's exactly why I think we should do it. This boy needs a family who won't give up on him. What do you think, Maya? David asked, turning to his daughter. This wouldn't be easy. Zephyr has been hurt by a lot of people, so he might not trust us right away. And if he does have episodes, you might sometimes feel scared or overwhelmed. Maya thought about this seriously. She imagined what it would be like to be 12 years old and know that 7 families had decided you weren't worth keeping. She thought about how lonely Zephyr must feel, how he must wonder if he'd ever have a real home. I think, Maya said carefully, that everyone deserves a family that loves them no matter what. And I think maybe Zephyr just needs people who understand that being different doesn't make you bad. Lin smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. But what if he doesn't like me? Maya asked, a new worry occurring to her. What if you don't like him? David countered gently. Maya considered this. I guess we'll just have to figure it out together. That's what families do, right? The decision was made that night, though it took several more hours of discussion about practicalities. They would need to rearrange the apartment, with Maya giving up her small bedroom to Zephyr and moving to a corner of the living room sectioned off with a curtain. They would need to budget even more carefully, though the colony provided some support for families who adopted special needs children. Most importantly, they would need to prepare themselves for the challenges that came with bringing home a traumatized child who had every reason not to trust adults. 3 days later, Maya found herself in the stark waiting room of the Luna Colony Adoption Center, her stomach churning with nervous excitement. The building smelled like disinfectant and recycled air, and the walls were painted in colors that were probably meant to be cheerful but somehow made the place feel even more institutional. Remember what we talked about, Lin said quietly, smoothing Maya's hair. Zephyr might be scared or defensive at first. Don't take it personally if he doesn't warm up to you right away. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Rodriguez, emerged from a hallway carrying a thick file. The Chen family? Zephyr is ready to meet you. Maya's heart pounded as they followed Ms. Rodriguez down a long corridor lined with doors. Through some of the windows, she could see other children, some playing, some sitting alone, all of them wearing the same expression of guarded hope that she'd seen in Zephyr's photograph. I should prepare you, Ms. Rodriguez said as they stopped outside a door marked with the number 7. Zephyr has been resistant to this meeting. He's convinced that you'll change your minds once you meet him in person. It's happened before. How many times?
Lynn asked softly. Every time, Ms. Rodriguez admitted. Usually within the first hour of meeting him. Maya felt a flare of indignation on behalf of a boy she hadn't even met yet. How could people be so cruel? How could they get a child's hopes up only to crush them? We're not going to do that, Maya said firmly, surprising the adults with her conviction. Ms. Rodriguez smiled sadly. I hope you're right, sweetie. I really do. The door opened to reveal a small, sparse room with a bed, a desk, and a single window that looked out onto the colony's industrial district. Sitting on the bed with his back to them was a figure that Maya immediately recognized from the photograph, though seeing him in person was somehow more striking. Zephyr was smaller than she'd expected, though she knew he was 12. His silver-white hair caught the artificial light strangely, and, when he turned to look at them, Maya had to suppress a gasp. His golden eyes were even more remarkable in person, but it was the wariness in them that made her chest tight. He looked like an animal that had been cornered too many times, ready to flee or fight at the first sign of danger. Zephyr, Ms. Rodriguez said gently, this is the Chen family. They'd like to talk with you. For a long moment, nobody moved. Zephyr's golden eyes flicked from David to Lynn to Maya, and she could see him cataloging details, looking for clues about what kind of people they were. The scales along his cheekbones seemed to shimmer slightly in the light, and Maya noticed that his fingernails were slightly pointed, more like claws. How long? Zephyr asked finally, his voice carrying a maturity that seemed far beyond his 12 years. How long what? David asked, settling into the room's single chair while Lynn sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain some distance. How long before you bring me back? Zephyr clarified, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. The record is 6 weeks. The Hendersons made it almost 2 months before they decided I was too much trouble. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She couldn't imagine living with such certainty of abandonment. Without thinking, she stepped forward and sat on the floor in front of Zephyr's bed, looking up at him. What if we don't bring you back? She asked simply. Zephyr's golden eyes fixed on her, and, for a moment his carefully controlled expression flickered. Everyone brings me back eventually. Not everyone, Maya said with the absolute certainty that only an 8-year-old could possess. I asked my parents for a brother for 3 years. I'm not giving up my brother just because he's different. You don't know what different means, Zephyr said, but there was less hostility in his voice than before. You don't know what I can do when I get angry. So show me, Maya challenged, ignoring the sharp intake of breath from her parents. Zephyr stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could see him weighing her words. Slowly, deliberately, he held out his hand. As she watched, fascinated, his fingernails extended into definite claws, sharp and gleaming. The scales along his cheekbones became more prominent, and his golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. I can hear everyone's heartbeat in this building, Zephyr said quietly. I can smell what you had for breakfast, what soap you use, whether you're afraid of me. When I get really upset, I'm strong enough to put my fist through a wall. Maya studied his transformed hand with interest rather than fear. That's actually pretty cool. I bet you'd be great at protecting people. The claws retracted so quickly that Maya wondered if she'd imagined them. You think it's cool? Yeah, Maya said honestly. I mean, it's not normal, but normal is kind of boring anyway. My friend Jessica's dad is from Mars and he has gills behind his ears. My friend Marco's mom is a cyborg and she has to plug herself in to charge every night. You're not the only different person on Luna Colony. For the first time, something that might have been hope flickered in Zephyr's golden eyes. The other families, they said I was a monster. They said having draconian blood made me dangerous. My mom says that blood doesn't make someone good or bad, Maya replied. It's what you choose to do that matters. Lynn smiled softly. Maya's right. We're not interested in your draconian heritage as something to fear. We're interested in you as a person who needs a family. But, I do have episodes, Zephyr warned, looking at David. When I get overwhelmed, I sometimes lose control. I've broken things. I've scared people. David nodded seriously. We know. Ms. Rodriguez gave us your full file. Maya sometimes has tantrums too, and she's never hurt anyone. We figure we can learn together how to help you manage the difficult moments. What if I hurt Maya? Zephyr asked, and the genuine worry in his voice made Maya's heart ache. What if I hurt you? Maya countered. I mean, I probably won't, but what if I say something mean when I'm mad? What if I don't understand something about being part draconian and I accidentally make you feel bad? Zephyr considered this. I guess we'd have to forgive each other and try to do better. Exactly, Maya said, grinning. That's what families do. The room fell silent for a moment, and Maya could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air. She looked at Zephyr, really looked at him, and saw past the scales and the golden eyes to the boy underneath. He was scared, just like she would be if she'd been abandoned 7 times. He was trying to protect himself the only way he knew how, by expecting the worst. I have a question, Maya said finally. What? Zephyr asked warily. Do you like dogs? The question was so unexpected that Zephyr blinked in confusion. Dogs? Yeah, dogs. Do you like them? Yes, I guess so. Why? Maya smiled. Because my mom says you have a dog's soul. She means you're loyal and protective and you just want someone to love you and not give up on you. And I think she's right. Zephyr's golden eyes filled with tears that he quickly blinked away. You really want to adopt me? We really do, Lynn said firmly. If you'll have us. For the first time since they'd entered the room, Zephyr smiled a real smile that transformed his entire face. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. Maya jumped up from the floor and, without thinking, threw her arms around Zephyr in an enthusiastic hug. For a moment, he stiffened in surprise, but then, his arms came up to hug her back, and Maya could feel some of the tension leave his small frame. Welcome to the family, big brother, she whispered against his shoulder. As they pulled apart, Maya noticed that Zephyr's scales were shimmering with an iridescent quality that hadn't been there before, and his golden eyes seemed brighter. She would later learn that this was what happened when Zephyr felt truly happy. His draconian traits became beautiful rather than intimidating. So what happens now? Zephyr asked, looking around at his new family. Now, David said, standing up and extending his hand to Zephyr, we go home. The word home seemed to echo in the small room, carrying with it all the weight of belonging that Zephyr had never experienced before. As he stood up to shake David's hand, Maya could see that he was still scared, still expecting something to go wrong. But, for the first time in his 12 years, he was also allowing himself to hope. The paperwork took another 2 hours, during which Maya entertained Zephyr with stories about their apartment, their neighbors, and the school he'd be attending. She told him about the small park on level 7 where kids played zero-gravity games, about the market where vendors from all over the solar system sold strange and wonderful foods, and about the observation deck where you could watch Earth rise over Luna's horizon. It sounds nice, Zephyr said quietly as they finally left the adoption center, his few possessions packed in a single bag. It's not perfect, Maya admitted as they walked through the colony's main corridor, past shops and cafes and the ever-present hum of life support systems. The apartment is kind of small, and sometimes the recycling systems make weird noises at night. But it's home. As they approached the transport platform that would take them back to their residential sector, Zephyr suddenly stopped walking. Maya turned to see him standing frozen, his head tilted slightly as if he was listening to something the rest of them couldn't hear. Zephyr? Lynn asked gently. What is it? There are so many people, Zephyr whispered, his golden eyes wide. I can hear all their heartbeats. I can smell their emotions. They're all so loud. Maya suddenly understood. With his enhanced senses, the crowded transport station must be overwhelming. She could see his breathing becoming shallow, his hands starting to shake slightly. Without hesitation, Maya slipped her hand into his. Close your eyes, she said softly. Just focus on my voice, okay? Ignore everything else. Zephyr's golden eyes fixed on her face, and Maya could see him struggling to maintain control.
My mom taught me this trick when I get overwhelmed, Maya continued, her voice calm and steady. You imagine that you're a tree, and all the noise and confusion is just wind blowing through your branches. It can't hurt you because you're rooted strong and deep. Slowly, she felt the tension leave Zephyr's hand. His breathing deepened, and the shimmer in his scales settled into a softer glow.
Better? Maya asked.
Zephyr nodded, though he didn't let go of her hand.
How did you know to do that?
I get overwhelmed too sometimes, Maya admitted.
Just not the same way you do. Come on, let's go home. As the transport carried them through the colony's tunnels toward their residential sector, Maya watched Zephyr take in his new surroundings with wonder.
His enhanced senses were picking up details that she couldn't even imagine, and she could see him cataloging everything, the sounds, the smells, the subtle vibrations of the transport system. It's beautiful, he said suddenly, looking out the transport window at the colony's intricate network of tunnels and chambers carved into Luna's rock.
You think so? Maya asked, surprised.
She'd never thought of the colony as particularly beautiful, it was just home. Humans built this, Zephyr said, his voice filled with a kind of awe. They took a dead rock in space and made it into a place where families can live and children can grow up.
That's amazing.
Maya had never thought about it that way, but she realized he was right.
The Luna colony was amazing, a testament to human ingenuity and determination.
Seeing it through Zephyr's eyes, she felt a new appreciation for the place she'd always taken for granted. As they finally reached their residential sector and walked the familiar corridors toward home, Maya could feel Zephyr's nervousness returning. This was it, the moment when he would see where he'd be living, where he'd hopefully be staying permanently. It's just around this corner, Maya said, squeezing his hand reassuringly. When they stopped in front of apartment 2847, Zephyr stared at the simple door with its small nameplate reading Chin family as if he couldn't quite believe this was really happening.
Ready?
David asked, pressing his palm to the door's biometric scanner.
Zephyr nodded, though Maya could see his hands trembling slightly.
The door slid open to reveal their small but comfortable apartment. Maya watched Zephyr's face as he took in the living space, the worn but clean furniture, the photos on the walls, the plants that Lynn tended carefully in their hydroponic planters, the window that looked out onto one of the colony's main thoroughfares. This is home, Lynn said simply. And, as Maya watched Zephyr's golden eyes fill with tears he was trying hard not to shed, she knew that for the first time in his 12 years, he truly believed that he had found one. 3 weeks into Zephyr's new life with the Chen family, Maya woke up to the sound of muffled sobbing coming from behind the curtain that separated her sleeping area from the rest of the living room. She lay still for a moment, listening to her brother's quiet distress, her heart aching for him.
This had become a pattern.
During the day, Zephyr was polite, helpful, and seemed to be adjusting well to family life. He helped with chores without being asked, never complained about anything, and was unfailingly gentle with Maya. But, at night, when he thought everyone was asleep, the carefully maintained facade would crack, and the scared, traumatized boy would emerge. Maya slipped out of her makeshift bed and tiptoed across the living room to where Zephyr's sleeping area was sectioned off. She could see his silhouette through the thin curtain, curled up in a tight ball on his narrow bed, his shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. "Zephyr," she whispered softly.
"Are you okay?"
The crying stopped immediately, and Maya could practically feel her brother forcing himself back into composure. "I'm fine, Maya," came his muffled voice.
"Go back to sleep."
"You don't sound fine," Maya said, settling down cross-legged on the floor outside his curtain.
"Want to talk about it?" "You'll think I'm stupid."
"I won't.
I promise."
After a long pause, the curtain rustled and Zephyr's face appeared, his golden eyes red-rimmed and his silver hair disheveled.
"I had the dream again."
Maya had heard about the dream from her parents' whispered conversations. According to the adoption center's files, Zephyr had recurring nightmares about being abandoned, about his new family deciding he was too much trouble and sending him back to the center.
"You dreamed we sent you away?" Maya asked gently. Zephyr nodded, not meeting her eyes.
"You all realized that I'm too weird, too different. Your parents said they made a mistake, and you said you never wanted a brother anyway." Maya's heart clenched.
Zephyr, look at me.
Reluctantly, he raised his golden eyes to meet hers. I would never say that, Maya said with fierce conviction.
Ever.
You're my brother, and I love you.
You barely know me, Zephyr whispered.
I know enough, Maya replied firmly. I know you always make sure I get the bigger portion when we're splitting snacks. I know you helped Dad fix his prosthetic leg without being asked. I know you spent an hour helping me with my math homework yesterday even though you could have solved all the problems in 5 minutes.
Zephyr's expression flickered with something that might have been hope. You noticed all that?
Of course I noticed. You're my brother.
Maya paused, then made a decision. Can I show you something?
Curious despite his distress, Zephyr nodded. Maya disappeared for a moment and returned with her personal tablet, the one she used for schoolwork and games. She pulled up a file and turned the screen toward him. I've been keeping a journal since you got here, she explained.
Look.
Zephyr took the tablet with careful hands, his enhanced vision allowing him to read easily in the dim light. Maya had documented every small moment of his integration into their family, how he'd quietly reprogrammed their old food synthesizer to work more efficiently, how he'd stayed up all night helping Lynn tend to her sick plants, how he'd used his enhanced hearing to detect a malfunction in the building's life support system that could have been dangerous.
You wrote all this about me?
Zephyr asked, his voice barely above a whisper.
Every day, Maya confirmed.
I wanted to remember all the good stuff, because I know someday when we're grown up, I'll want to tell my kids about my amazing big brother. Tears began rolling down Zephyr's cheeks, but this time they weren't tears of fear or sadness.
You really think I'm amazing?
I know you are, Maya said simply.
And so do Mom and Dad.
We're not going anywhere, Zephyr. You're stuck with us. For the first time since she'd known him, Zephyr laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his whole face.
Stuck with you, huh?
Completely stuck.
Forever and ever, whether you like it or not.
Zephyr wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and Maya noticed that his scales were shimmering with that beautiful iridescent quality again. I like it, he said softly.
I like it a lot.
Good, Maya said, grinning. Because tomorrow is Saturday, and I want to show you the observation deck I told you about. And, next week, you start school with me, and I can introduce you to all my friends.
Zephyr's expression grew anxious again.
What if the other kids are scared of me?
Some of them might be, Maya admitted honestly. But some of them will think you're as cool as I do. And the ones who are scared just don't know you yet. What if I have an episode at school? Zephyr asked, voicing his greatest fear. Maya considered this seriously.
Then, we'll deal with it. That's what families do, we stick together through the hard stuff.
The next morning brought Maya's first real test of that promise.
She woke to find Zephyr pacing the living room like a caged animal, his golden eyes bright with anxiety and his scales flickering with nervous energy. I can't do it, he was saying to their parents, his voice tight with panic.
I can't go to school. There are too many people, too many sounds, too many smells. What if I lose control?
Lynn was trying to calm him down, but Maya could see that her mother was out of her depth. This was different from Zephyr's quiet nighttime distress, this was the beginning of what the adoption files had called an episode.
Zephyr, Maya said calmly, stepping into the room. Remember what I taught you about being a tree?
His pacing stopped, and his wild golden eyes fixed on her.
Maya, you don't understand. I can hear everyone in the building getting ready for the day.
I can smell their breakfast, their soap, their emotions. Mrs. Henderson on level 3 is angry about something, and Mr. Kim on level 5 is scared about his job.
It's all so loud.
Okay, Maya said, keeping her voice steady.
So let's make it quieter.
She moved to their small sound system and put on some soft music, nothing too complex, just simple instrumental melodies. Then, she went to the kitchen and pulled out the strongest smelling thing she could find, a container of cinnamon that Lynn used for baking.
Here, Maya said, holding the cinnamon under Zephyr's nose.
Focus on this smell instead of all the others. Slowly, she could see him beginning to center himself. His breathing became less ragged, and the chaotic flickering of his scales settled into a steadier rhythm.
Now, Maya continued, let's practice your tree meditation, but this time, imagine that all those sounds and smells are just background noise, like the hum of the life support systems. They're always there, but you don't have to pay attention to them unless something is actually wrong. David and Lynn watched in amazement as their 8-year-old daughter talked their 12-year-old son down from what could have been a destructive episode.
Maya had an intuitive understanding of Zephyr's sensory overwhelm that came from her own experiences with feeling overwhelmed, even though hers manifested differently. I don't know if I can handle school, Zephyr said once he'd regained his composure.
What if we start small? Maya suggested.
What if today we just go to the observation deck like we planned, and tomorrow we visit the school when it's empty so you can get used to the space? Then, Monday you can come to class with me, but if it gets too much, you can leave.
Zephyr considered this. You'd really stay with me? Where else would I go? Maya asked with a grin.
You're my brother. The observation deck turned out to be perfect for Zephyr's enhanced senses. Located on the highest level of the colony, it offered a panoramic view of space that was both beautiful and peaceful. The deck was usually crowded, but early Saturday morning found it nearly empty. This is incredible, Zephyr breathed, his face pressed against the reinforced transparent aluminum that separated them from the vacuum of space. Maya had seen this view thousands of times, but watching Zephyr experience it for the first time made her see it with new eyes. Earth hung in the star-filled darkness like a blue and white marble, its beauty stark against the cosmic backdrop. Luna's surface stretched away beneath them, cratered and ancient and magnificent in its desolation. The adoption center didn't have windows, Zephyr said quietly. For 3 years, I never saw outside. I forgot how big everything is. Well, now you can come here whenever you want, Maya said. Mom and Dad won't mind. And, when you're older, you can apply for one of the surface exploration jobs if you want to actually walk on Luna's surface. Zephyr's golden eyes lit up. You think they'd let someone like me do that? Why wouldn't they? Your enhanced senses would probably make you better at it than most humans. You could detect equipment malfunctions or dangerous atmospheric changes before anyone else. It was the first time Maya had seen Zephyr think about his draconian traits as advantages rather than problems. She could see the idea taking root in his mind that his differences might actually be gifts rather than curses. They spent the morning on the observation deck, with Maya pointing out various features of Earth and Luna while Zephyr shared what his enhanced senses could detect that her normal human perception missed. There's a micrometeorite storm about 20 degrees to starboard, Zephyr said at one point, his head tilted as he listened to sounds Maya couldn't hear. The colony's defense grid is tracking it, but it's too small to be dangerous. You can hear that? Maya asked, fascinated. I can hear the grid's targeting systems adjusting, Zephyr explained. It's like a really high-pitched humming that gets faster when the system is actively tracking something. That's amazing. You could work in colony defense with abilities like that. For the first time since she'd known him, Zephyr began to talk about the future with excitement rather than fear. He shared dreams he'd never dared voice before, of using his abilities to help people, of having a job that mattered, of being valued for what he could do rather than feared for what he was. I always wanted to be useful, Zephyr admitted as they finally headed home for lunch. All the families who returned me said I was more trouble than I was worth. I want to be worth something. You already are, Maya said firmly. You're worth everything to us. That afternoon brought an unexpected test of Maya's words. They were in the apartment's small common area, Maya working on a school project while Zephyr helped Lynn prepare dinner, when the building's emergency alarms began blaring. Maya saw Zephyr freeze, his enhanced hearing making the alarms much more painful for him than for the rest of them. But, instead of having an episode, he cocked his head, listening intently. It's not a drill, he said suddenly, his voice sharp with concern. There's a real emergency. Level 12, Section C. I can hear people screaming. David was already moving toward their emergency supplies, but Zephyr was faster. It's a structural failure, he continued, his golden eyes wide. I can hear the metal groaning. The emergency crews are on their way, but there are people trapped.
How can you possibly know all that? Lynn asked, though she wasn't questioning his assessment so much as marveling at it.
I can hear everything, Zephyr said simply. The building stress patterns, the emergency frequency communications, the trapped people calling for help. There are at least 6 people stuck in Section C, and the corridor is filling with toxic gas from a ruptured environmental system. Maya watched her brother transform before her eyes. The frightened, uncertain boy disappeared, replaced by someone focused and determined. His draconian traits, which he usually tried to hide, became pronounced as his body responded to the crisis, his scales shimmering with alertness, his golden eyes glowing brighter, his senses operating at their peak capacity. I have to help, Zephyr said, already moving toward the door.
Absolutely not, David said firmly. You're 12 years old, and this is a job for emergency professionals.
But I can get there faster than they can, Zephyr argued. I can navigate by sound and smell even if the corridors are full of smoke.
I can find the trapped people and guide them to safety. It's too dangerous, Lynn insisted.
Maya watched the argument unfold and realized that this was the moment that would define Zephyr's place in their family. He could choose to obey their parents and remain safe but useless, or he could choose to use his abilities to help people who desperately needed it.
I'm going with him, Maya announced suddenly.
Maya, no, both parents said simultaneously. If Zephyr goes alone and something happens to him, you'll blame yourselves forever, Maya said with logic beyond her 8 years. If I go with him, he'll be more careful because he'll want to protect me.
And maybe I can help somehow.
Zephyr stared at her, his golden eyes wide.
Maya, you could get hurt.
So could you, Maya replied. But people need help, and you're the only one who can find them in time. I'm not letting my brother be a hero all by himself. David and Lynn looked at each other, and Maya could see them weighing the risks. Finally, Lynn nodded slowly. Go, she said. But you stay together, you don't take any unnecessary risks, and you get out the moment the emergency crews take over. Zephyr and Maya ran through the colony's corridors, following the sound of alarms and the acrid smell of smoke that was beginning to filter through the ventilation systems. Maya had never seen her brother move like this, with purpose and confidence, his enhanced senses guiding them through the maze of passages toward the emergency. This way, Zephyr said, turning down a corridor that Maya would have passed by.
I can hear them.
They're trapped behind a blast door that sealed automatically when the gas leak was detected. They arrived at Section C to find chaos. Emergency crews were setting up equipment, but the smoke and toxic gas were making it difficult for them to locate the exact position of the trapped colonists. Excuse me, Maya said politely to the emergency coordinator, a harried-looking woman with captain's insignia on her uniform.
My brother can help.
The captain looked down at them with annoyance.
Kids, you need to evacuate the area immediately.
I can hear exactly where they are, Zephyr said, stepping forward. His scales were shimmering brightly now, and his golden eyes glowed in the emergency lighting.
6 people, behind the blast door in compartment C7.
The gas is coming from a ruptured line in compartment C5, and it's spreading through the ventilation system. The captain stared at Zephyr for a moment, taking in his obvious non-human characteristics.
Are you? Half draconian, Zephyr confirmed. Enhanced hearing and smell.
I can guide your people directly to the trapped colonists and help you locate the source of the gas leak. Maya watched as the captain made a split-second decision. Johnson, she called to one of her crew. Take this boy's guidance. If he can pinpoint locations, we can cut our rescue time in half. For the next hour, Maya watched her brother become the hero she'd always known he could be. His enhanced senses guided the emergency crews with pinpoint accuracy, allowing them to reach the trapped colonists in record time and seal the gas leak before it could spread further through the colony. When the last of the rescued colonists was safely evacuated to the medical center, the emergency coordinator approached Zephyr with something like awe in her expression.
Son, she said, what's your name?
Zephyr Chen, he replied, and Maya felt a surge of pride at how naturally he used their family name.
Well, Zephyr Chen, you probably saved 6 lives today. Have you ever thought about emergency services as a career? Zephyr's golden eyes widened. You mean, you'd want someone like me? Want you? The captain laughed.
Kid, with senses like yours, you'd be the most valuable member of any emergency team in the solar system.
Here's my contact information. When you're old enough, if you're interested in training, you call me.
As they walked home through corridors still buzzing with the aftermath of the emergency, Maya could see that something fundamental had changed in her brother. The scared, uncertain boy was still there, but now there was also a young man who knew his worth, who had seen what his abilities could accomplish when used to help others. I can't believe she wants to train me, Zephyr said, clutching the captain's contact card like it was made of gold.
I can, Maya said simply. You were amazing today, Zephyr. You probably saved those people's lives. We saved them, Zephyr corrected. I couldn't have done it without you there supporting me.
When they arrived home to find their parents waiting anxiously in the living room, Maya watched Lynn burst into tears of relief and pride. David pulled both children into a fierce hug, his own eyes bright with emotion. Don't ever scare us like that again, Lynn said, though her tone carried more pride than reproach.
Are you proud of us? Maya asked.
Proud doesn't begin to cover it, David replied, ruffling Zephyr's silver hair. Both of you showed courage and compassion today. You made the choice to help people who needed it, even when it meant putting yourselves at risk.
So I'm really part of this family? Zephyr asked quietly. Even after what happened today? Even though I'm different?
Lynn cupped his face in her hands, being careful of his scales. Zephyr, you've been part of this family since the moment we met you. What happened today didn't change that, it just showed us how lucky we are to have you.
That night, for the first time since joining the Chen family, Zephyr slept through the night without nightmares.
And, Maya, listening to her brother's peaceful breathing from across the room, smiled to herself in the darkness. The next morning brought a knock at their door. Maya opened it to find three of their neighbors standing in the corridor, Mrs. Park from down the hall, Mr. Santos from upstairs, and old Mr. Chen, no relation, despite the shared name, from the apartment next door.
Is Zephyr home? Mrs. Park asked politely. Maya called her brother, wondering if they were in trouble for some reason.
When Zephyr appeared, looking nervous, Mrs. Park smiled warmly.
We wanted to thank you, she said simply. My daughter was one of the people trapped yesterday.
The emergency crews said you're the reason they found her so quickly. We brought you something, Mr. Santos added, holding out a small potted plant.
It's a lunar orchid.
Very rare, and very beautiful.
We thought you might like it.
But, it was old Mr. Chen who surprised them the most. He stepped forward and bowed formally to Zephyr, a gesture of deep respect that left the 12-year-old speechless. In my culture, the elderly man said, we honor those who use their gifts to protect others. You have brought honor to your family name, young Zephyr. After their neighbors left, Zephyr stood holding the potted orchid with tears streaming down his cheeks. They don't think I'm a monster, he whispered. Of course not, Maya said, putting her arm around his shoulders. You're a hero. You're my brother.
And, you're home.
As Zephyr carefully placed the orchid on the windowsill where it would catch the artificial sunlight, Maya realized that this was what she had been hoping for from the moment they brought him home. Not just that Zephyr would find a family, but that he would find his place in their world valued, respected, and loved for exactly who he was. The scared little boy who had been returned by 7 families was finally, truly home. 6 months after the emergency rescue that had changed everything, Maya woke on her 9th birthday to find Zephyr already up, sitting by the window with the lunar orchid their neighbors had given him. The plant had thrived under his care, its silvery blooms matching his hair in the artificial morning light. Happy birthday, little sister, Zephyr said softly, not turning from the window. Maya padded over to join him, noting the tension in his shoulders.
What's wrong?
Nothing's wrong, Zephyr said, but Maya had learned to read her brother's moods. His scales were dim this morning, lacking their usual shimmer, and his golden eyes held a distant quality that meant he was thinking about something serious. Zephyr, Maya said, settling beside him on the window ledge.
You know you can tell me anything, right?
He finally turned to look at her, and Maya was surprised to see uncertainty in his expression.
Maya, what if I'm not who you think I am? What do you mean?
Zephyr picked up a data pad from the table beside him.
I've been researching draconian genetics and biology.
Did you know that most half-draconians don't develop their full abilities until they reach adolescence?
Maya shook her head, wondering where this was going.
I'm 13 next month, Zephyr continued. According to the research, that's when the second phase of development usually begins. Enhanced strength, improved regenerative abilities, and... He paused, swallowing hard.
Aggressive territorial instincts.
So?
Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand his concern.
So what if I change? Zephyr asked, his voice barely above a whisper.
What if the draconian side of me becomes stronger, and I become dangerous? What if I stop being the person you love and become something else entirely?
Maya studied her brother's face, seeing the fear that had been eating at him. She thought about everything she'd learned about him over the past months, his gentleness with her, his protectiveness toward their family, his desperate desire to help rather than harm.
Do you remember what you told me about being able to sense emotions? Maya asked finally.
Yes.
What do you sense from me right now?
Zephyr concentrated for a moment, his enhanced abilities focusing on her emotional state.
Love, he said slowly. Certainty. No fear at all.
That's right, Maya said firmly.
No fear.
Because I know who you are, Zephyr. You're not going to become some kind of monster just because you get stronger or develop new abilities. But, what if the territorial instincts will make you even more protective of the people you love, Maya interrupted.
Which is exactly what you already are.
Before Zephyr could respond, their parents emerged from the kitchen with a small cake and 3 presents wrapped in colorful paper.
The family tradition was simple, homemade gifts and a breakfast of Maya's favorite foods.
Happy birthday, sweetheart, Lynn said, kissing the top of Maya's head.
9 years old. You're practically grown up.
Maya grinned as she opened her presents, a new journal from her father, a set of art supplies from her mother, and, from Zephyr, a small carved figure that made her gasp in delight. You made this? She asked, holding up the intricate sculpture. It was a perfect miniature of a tree, carved from some kind of dark wood, with every branch and leaf detailed with incredible precision. I've been working on it for weeks, Zephyr admitted, his scales brightening with pleasure at her reaction. I used my claws to do the fine detail work.
I thought you might like having your tree meditation in solid form.
Maya threw her arms around her brother, touched beyond words. The carving represented hours of careful work, and she could see how he'd used his draconian abilities not for destruction but for creation. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever made for me, she said honestly.
Their quiet birthday celebration was interrupted by the door chime.
Lynn opened it to find a woman in a formal colony council uniform, her expression serious.
Mrs. Chen? I'm Counselor Martinez from the Colonial Education Department. I need to speak with you about Zephyr.
Maya felt her brother tense beside her, his old fears of being taken away rushing back.
But, the counselor's next words surprised them all.
We've been reviewing Zephyr's academic assessments and his performance during the emergency 6 months ago, Counselor Martinez continued. We'd like to offer him a place in our advanced placement program for gifted students.
Gifted?
David asked, clearly surprised. Your son's test scores are off the charts, the counselor explained, pulling up data on her tablet. His spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and analytical thinking abilities are in the 99th percentile. Combined with his enhanced senses, we believe he has the potential to excel in fields like engineering, xenobiology, or emergency management.
Maya watched Zephyr's golden eyes widen with disbelief. You want to put me in advanced classes? We want to challenge you appropriately, Counselor Martinez replied.
You've been coasting in regular classes because the material is too easy. The advanced placement program would put you with other exceptional students and give you access to college-level coursework.
What would this mean exactly? Lynn asked, her protective instincts engaged.
Zephyr would join a small cohort of highly gifted students for accelerated learning. He'd still have time for normal social activities, but his academic work would be much more challenging. If he excels, he could potentially graduate early and begin university studies. Maya saw her brother struggling with the offer, torn between excitement and fear. "What if the other students don't want to work with me?" he asked quietly. The advanced placement students are selected not just for intelligence but for maturity and character, the counselor assured him. They're used to working with individuals who are different in various ways. In fact, I think you'll find you fit in better there than in regular classes. After the counselor left, the family sat around their small table discussing the opportunity. Maya could see that Zephyr wanted to accept but was afraid to hope for something good. "What do you think, Maya?" he asked suddenly. "Would you be okay if I was in different classes?" Maya thought about this seriously. She'd gotten used to having her brother in regular school with her, and she'd miss seeing him during the day. But she also knew how bored he'd been in classes that were too easy for his enhanced intellect. "I think you should do it," she said finally. "You're too smart for regular classes, and you deserve to learn things that actually challenge you." "But we'd see each other less." "We live together," Maya pointed out. "We'll still see each other every morning and every night. And maybe if you're in classes that are actually interesting, you'll be happier." The decision was made, and 2 weeks later, Maya watched Zephyr nervously prepare for his first day with the advanced placement cohort. He was fidgeting with his clothes, trying to make sure his scales weren't too visible, when Maya stopped him. "Zephyr, what are you doing?" "Trying to look normal," he admitted. "Why?" "The counselor said these students are used to differences. Besides, your scales are beautiful. Why would you want to hide them?" Zephyr looked at himself in the mirror, really looked, for perhaps the first time since joining their family. His silver hair caught the light, his golden eyes were bright with intelligence, and his scales shimmered with subtle iridescence. "I've spent so long trying to appear human," he said slowly. "Maybe it's time to just be yourself," Maya suggested. "The real you, not the version you think other people want to see." That afternoon, Zephyr came home from his first day with the advanced placement students practically glowing with excitement. His scales were brighter than Maya had ever seen them, and his golden eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "How was it?" Maya asked eagerly. "Amazing," Zephyr breathed. "Maya, these students are incredible. There's a girl named Aria who can calculate faster than most computers, a boy named Marcus whose parents are from Europa and he can think in three-dimensional mathematical structures, and another girl named Zara whose cybernetic implants let her interface directly with computer systems." "So you fit in?" "I more than fit in," Zephyr said, grinning widely. "When I told them about my enhanced senses, they immediately started brainstorming ways to incorporate that into our group projects. They think my abilities are assets, not problems." Maya felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Her brother was finally finding his place in the world, surrounded by people who valued his unique gifts. "Oh, and, Maya," Zephyr continued, "I told them about you. About how you're the one who taught me to control my episodes and believe in myself. They want to meet the little sister who's smarter than most adults." "They want to meet me?" Maya asked, surprised. "Aria said anyone who can talk a half-draconian down from a sensory overload episode and convince him to help with emergency rescues must be pretty special herself." The weeks that followed brought changes to the Chen family's routine, but they were good changes. Zephyr thrived in his advanced classes, making friends for the first time in his life and discovering academic subjects that truly challenged his intellect. Maya continued in her regular grade level but found herself helping Zephyr with some of his projects, her different perspective often providing insights that even his gifted classmates missed. One evening, as Maya was working on her own homework while Zephyr studied advanced quantum mechanics at the same table, their father brought up a subject that had been weighing on his mind. "Zephyr, we got a communication from the adoption center today," David said carefully. Maya saw her brother freeze, his old fears rushing back. "What did they want?" "They wanted to know how you're doing," Lynn said gently. "Ms. Rodriguez said that in her 15 years as a social worker, she's never seen a child transform so completely. She wanted to thank us." "Thank you?" Zephyr asked,
confused. For proving that the right family can make all the difference, David explained. She said you've become their success story, the child who everyone said was unadoptable who found exactly the right home. Maya watched her brother process this information. They're not taking me away? Zephyr, Lynn said softly, nobody is ever taking you away from this family again. You're our son, legally and, in every way that matters. Nothing is going to change that. In fact, David added, we've been thinking about making it official. Official how? Maya asked. We'd like to change Zephyr's legal name, Lynn explained. Right now, his official documents still list him as Zephyr Ward, the name they gave him at the adoption center. We'd like to change it to Zephyr Chen, if that's what he wants. Zephyr's golden eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy rather than fear. You want to give me your family name? You already carry our family name and everything but legal documents, David said. We'd like to make it permanent. Yes, Zephyr whispered. Yes, I'd like that very much. Maya felt her own eyes fill with tears. She knew how much this meant to her brother, to officially, legally, permanently belong to a family that wanted him. 3 months later, on a clear day when Earth was visible as a brilliant blue crescent in Luna's sky, the Chen family stood in the Colony Council chambers for the formal name change ceremony. Maya wore her best dress, and Zephyr had chosen not to hide his scales but to let them shimmer proudly in the ceremonial lighting. Zephyr Chen, the magistrate pronounced officially, welcome to your permanent legal identity. As they walked out of the council chambers, Maya slipped her hand into her brother's. How does it feel to officially be Zephyr Chen? It feels like coming home, Zephyr replied, squeezing her hand gently. That evening, they celebrated at the observation deck where Zephyr had first begun to dream of his future. The advanced placement cohort had joined them Arya, Marcus, Zara, and 3 other brilliant students who had become Zephyr's first real friends. Maya loved watching her brother with his classmates, seeing how naturally he fit into their group, how they valued his input and respected his abilities. Next year, Arya was saying, when we start our capstone projects, I think Zephyr should focus on emergency response systems. With his sensory abilities, he could design detection networks that would revolutionize colony safety. I'd like that, Zephyr said thoughtfully. I want to use my abilities to help people. You already do, Maya pointed out. Remember the atmospheric leak last month that you detected 3 days before the sensors picked it up? Or the time you helped find that lost child by tracking their scent through the ventilation system? It was true. Over the months since the dramatic emergency rescue, Zephyr had quietly helped with dozens of smaller incidents, his enhanced senses making him invaluable to colony safety. The emergency coordinator had already started calling him in as a consultant on difficult cases. I've been thinking, Zephyr said suddenly, looking out at the star-filled darkness beyond the colony's walls. About what you said a year ago, Maya. About how humans built this amazing place from nothing but dead rock and determination. What about it? I think that's what families do too, Zephyr said thoughtfully. They take broken pieces and build something beautiful and strong. They take someone like me, who didn't fit anywhere, and find a place where I belong perfectly. Maya smiled, thinking about how much they'd all grown over the past year. We didn't build you a place to belong, Zephyr. We just helped you see that you belonged here all along. As they stood together on the observation deck, surrounded by friends and family, watching Earth rise over Luna's ancient horizon, Maya knew that her brother had finally found what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not just a family that wouldn't abandon him, but a purpose that gave meaning to his unique gifts, friends who appreciated his differences, and, most importantly, the knowledge that he was valued for exactly who he was. The scared, unwanted child who had been returned by 7 families was gone, replaced by a confident young man who knew his worth and his place in the world. Zephyr Chen was home, not just in name but in every way that mattered. And Maya, watching her brother laugh with his friends as he pointed out constellations that only his enhanced vision could clearly see, knew that the best decision their family had ever made was opening their hearts to a lonely dragonling who just needed someone to believe in him. 2 years later, Maya would stand in this same spot watching Zephyr graduate early from the advanced placement program, already accepted to the Colonial University's prestigious emergency management program with a full scholarship.
She would think about that first night when he'd cried himself to sleep, afraid that they would abandon him like everyone else had, and marvel at the transformation that love and acceptance had wrought. But, even then, what would matter most wouldn't be his academic achievements or his future career prospects. What would matter most was the moment during his graduation speech when Zephyr would look out into the audience, find Maya's face, and say with absolute certainty, "I want to thank my family, who taught me that being different isn't something to hide from, but something to celebrate. They showed me that I don't need to be normal to be loved." The boy with a dog's soul had found his pack, and they would never let him go. Years would pass, and Zephyr would go on to revolutionize emergency response systems throughout the solar system, his unique abilities saving countless lives. He would marry Arya, his brilliant classmate who had always seen his scales as beautiful rather than strange. They would have children, some fully human, some carrying traces of draconian heritage, and they would raise them with the same unconditional love that the Chen family had shown him. But, through it all, the most important relationship in Zephyr's life would remain his bond with the little sister who had seen past his differences to the lonely boy underneath, who had taught him to be proud of who he was, and who had given him the greatest gift of all, the unshakable knowledge that he was wanted, valued, and loved. Maya Chen and Zephyr Chen would remain best friends and closest confidants for the rest of their lives, their relationship a testament to the power of family, not just the families we're born into, but the families we choose and the families that choose us. In the end, that's what the story had always been about, a dragonling with a dog's soul finding the family that could love him for exactly who he was, and the little girl who had seen his heart from the very beginning and refused to let him doubt his worth. Home isn't a place, it's the people who refuse to give up on you, who see your potential when you can't see it yourself, and who love you through every transformation life brings. For Zephyr Chen, home would always be the small apartment on Luna Colony where a family had opened their hearts to a lonely boy and taught him that being different was just another way of being extraordinary. The Dragonling had found his family, and his family had found their hero. And, in the vast darkness of space, on a small colony built from dreams and determination, that was the most human story of all.